Prime Minister, thank you for joining us for this end-of-year chat. At the end of last year, we sat down, I think, at the other end of this room, and you sort of tentatively were hoping that 2021 would be an easier year than 2020.
I'm glad I was tentative on that front.
How have you found this year?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I feel the same about this year as I'm sure every other New Zealander does. It's been a hard year, and from our perspective, it's certainly had patches that have been incredibly rough. But when we look at where we're finishing, it's still hard to go past those measures that are really meaningful for us about what did we want to achieve by the end of the year? How did we want to make sure that we finish the year? And when you look at the fact that we still in the OECD have the lowest number of deaths of any other country, lowest number of cases in the OECD, that tells us that it was rough, yes, but we got through, and we got through with our people. We also said it would be the year of the vaccine, and it has been. I mean, the results I had hoped we could achieve, but I'm not sure I would have quite believed if you had told me that we would finish the year with rates as high as this. I'm not sure I would have quite believed that.
It's an interesting, obviously the vaccine rates are very high, still going up, which must be pleasing for you.
It is.
At the same time, I mean, the fact that you had to mandate it in the way that it has been mandated in some areas, I mean, how comfortable have you been with that? Because we all have to make decisions that perhaps, it's two bad choices, right?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say is I wouldn't want the mandates to be painted as the thing that got the vast majority of people vaccinated, because in those areas where we've used them, that hasn't been the case. It's nudged an additional number over the line, but not the majority. The majority went and got vaccinated first before those mandates came in. Those mandates have been about giving people the assurance, whether they're going through the health system or the education system, that everyone is vaccinated. I would probably summarise a lot of the decisions this year as being between, and I've heard Minister Hipkins say this too, between a hard decision and another hard decision. There haven't been almost any easy ones, and in all of them there have been, you would have preferred not to have been in the situation where you were having to make them in the first place, but that's COVID-19, and that is definitely Delta. I've had people thank us for those. I've had teachers in schools say thank you for making that decision for us. And so I do sense a relief in some people that we've taken those hard decisions.
Do you have a sense of, like, in an ideal world, how long you would like to have mandating in place, or how long you would like to need to have it in place in some way? Well,
we've also been, I think, relatively narrow about where we've wanted to apply them. I look at other places and look, even Victoria, an extensive list of areas where they've mandated. Right from the outset, we wanted to really have a clear rationale for where we've used them, because it is a big call to say to an entire sector that we want all of you to be vaccinated. So we wanted to be able to hand on heart say this is the right place and the right way, because this keeps people safe. And so we've I think been quite considered about all those decisions. Would we prefer not to have had to make them? Would we have preferred that everyone just got vaccinated in those sectors themselves? Oh, of course, but the reality is those hard calls had to be made.
What have you found hardest this year?
There's a lot to choose from. Delta has been incredibly hard, and I think transitioning out of the elimination strategy was hard because there was such a simplicity to it. And there was a unity that came from it too. We all knew what we were doing and why, and it was hard to disagree with that strategy, but Delta made it impossible to hold on to.
Do you think, how far along on the journey from elimination to what the new world is going to be, do you think most New Zealanders are? I mean, how successful do you think you have been in
I think it takes. I do think it takes time. It's an adjustment. It was an adjustment for all of us. Of course, we always knew elimination was not a forever strategy. It was important while the world was waiting for extra tools to keep people safe. It was important while the world was working on vaccinations, because we had no other way to look after people other than those strict public health measures. So the plan always was, once you've got other tools, you do things differently. But at the same time, I think that wasn't to say that the transition was hard. It really was. And I remember, going through a process where I was just realising, as we were moving through that outbreak, some of the things we were seeing in the way that Delta was behaving, that it was harder for us to grab cases before they passed it on to others because the window was getting shorter. And so that was when we started to question whether or not we were going to be able to maintain it. I do think Aucklanders perhaps came to terms with that very, perhaps a little more quickly than the rest of the country, and that's natural. They were living it every day.
What's been your biggest success of the year?
Well, look, I am going to name some things alongside the pandemic because they're, you have to.
It doesn't have to be just COVID.
No, it doesn't.
Whatever you want.
Look, in this environment, I cannot go past the vaccination rates. And look, that's not something that's just a success held by the many people who are part of that program, but by New Zealand itself. But that for me was a reminder that the team of 5 million is still doing everything they can to give New Zealand the best chance at the best response possible. But alongside that, to come or to travel through a pandemic and one of the biggest health crises and therefore economic crises that we'll see in a lifetime, and have unemployment at 3.4%. That for me is therefore a measure that we always set out to look after people's health, but also their overall well-being, and that for me is a measure that we did that too. So that's a standout for me.
And what's been your biggest mistake or failure of the year?
I wish the transition had been smoother.
In what way?
Well, look, I think one of the things that we've always focused on is trying to map out exactly where we were going and how we intended to get there, but it was harder to do that in a really linear or smooth way this year because, there were so many moving pieces. What was happening with the Auckland outbreak? Were we keeping that contained enough to ease, at the same time managing the vaccination rollout, not just in Auckland but across the rest of the country, making sure we had enough protection in other places, flipping into a new system. I would have liked that to be smoother, but there were so many moving parts.
I mean, in hindsight,
but we've at the same time we've got where we needed to be as well.
So in hindsight obviously being 2020.
Yes.
In hindsight, do you think you'd wished you'd made the call that elimination was effectively over earlier, or in a more open way? I guess open's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. I mean, it was.
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
I do know what you mean. At the same time, as we were going through that process, there were still people who held different views about what was happening with the outbreak. So there wasn't any one day where it was just declared that was that. And so, but those are things I say, when I reflect back on it, that's what I would have liked to have done differently. But I often think about, well, at what point we knew what we knew at the time, and we did our very best with all the information we had, and there was a lot of competing advice coming through at that time too, which you'll see. But at the end of all of that, we're still here at the end of the year, having achieved what we set out to.
So what does the first traffic light summer mean for you? What are your plans over the summer? When are you getting out of here? What are you going to do?
But I think when you ask me what is the traffic light summer, I mean, one of the things that I will at least I will finish feeling satisfied about is that people, and I hope in New Zealand, relative to what I've seen in other countries, know what to expect. Now, one of the things that I've been reflecting on over the past couple of months, you see countries that have said, look, we've achieved these really high vaccination rates, and because of that, then everything's coming off and freedom. And I watched with great interest in Europe, particularly countries like Denmark, where they did that, because of course everyone wanted to believe that they were going to be able to succeed. And within 8 to 10 weeks, the restrictions were back, and increasingly they've ramped them up as well. So for me, I go into summer believing that we've set up a system that will go the distance. And look, when times are good, then the restrictions ease off, but everyone knows that if we have to, they know what will come next. And just managing that expectation in a pandemic, I think, is a really important thing. So that's what I'll be thinking a bit about over the summer. But a traffic light summer for me is about as same as every other summer, really. I spend my time with my family, usually in the warmest place I can find in the country with a bit of sun. I try and read, snippets, a page at a time with a 3-year-old. And that's exactly what I expect will happen this summer.
And so you'll be up north somewhere. Will you?
We're splitting time between my family and Clark's family, pretty much. And for the first couple of weeks, so also, these are extraordinary times. So we usually have duty ministers where we've got some COVID duty ministers as well, so that we've got those ministers who are usually making those COVID decisions who are on rosters. So I'll be doing a couple of weeks, and ministers will do a couple of weeks.
Are you getting married over the summer? Is that right?
That's the plan.
So how's the plan coming together?
I have to be really honest. Clark's in charge.
Yep.
Clark is planning the wedding. Yep.
Okay, anything else you can tell us about?
Honestly, not much.
Do you know when it is, for example? When you have to show up?
Yes, I do know when I have to show up. I know where to show up. And of course, he's not in charge of what I'm wearing. So I have a few jobs, but to be honest, not many.
Oh, good luck. Go well.
Thank you.
Have a great break.
Thank you. Same to you.
And is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Just hope that everyone gets a break. That everyone deserves it. And I'm very mindful, just before the end of the year finished, I went and visited a few of our public health teams around the country. Haven't yet had a chance to visit our lab teams, but they're a group of people who will just keep working all the way through, and I know we're all grateful to them as well.
Prime Minister, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.